Hello, custom car enthusiasts, and welcome back to Car Mechanic Simulator 2018. So, off screen, I went ahead and bought all the different parts we needed for this vehicle. It took me about half an hour actually to get everything because there were so many parts that needed to be fixed and replaced. So now, just taking the tires here, getting them set up, and this episode we're going to work on uh, pretty much the underneath portion of the car and getting it back onto its tires. So, getting these pieces reconnected. I took everything apart here, tires and springs, so that way I would have what I needed all set and ready to go when I needed to purchase new things. Because I did have to get 4 new tires overall. So, only replaced 2 of the rims, but did replace all 4 tires. Get those going. Take this shock off. I think that's the last one. Yeah. And I did only replace the parts this time that actually were in the red, except for the steering rack, which was at 34%. It was in the orange, but I was like, you know what? It is that close to breaking. I'm going to do the right thing by this vehicle and replace it. And I mean, that was a big decision because it's an $800 part, pretty much. So, wanted to make sure I did the right thing, but at the same time, definitely cost some money. So once we get this tire done, we'll go ahead and take all the parts here and start rebuilding the underside of this car. Alright, we can put the fuel tank back in. Go ahead and get the fuel pump in. We'll start back here at the back. Put these mufflers back in place. Because none of this stuff actually got replaced in the end. But it was just simpler taking everything off, making sure of what we needed to get taken care of. Here's one of those new pieces there in the knuckle, or the knuckle housing. Then we also have a new wheel hub on that side. And I believe a new axle as well. Yeah. So we'll fix this side up first, then we'll go ahead and move to the other side. Really, this has not been that challenging of a car to do, but it has been a lot of work. Just because of the amount of issues that it had going on. Did replace rubber bushings where they were needed. So while this is definitely not the prettiest vehicle in the end, it is now a safe vehicle, which is what we were going for here. I look forward to when I actually get to the point in the game where I've got like the paint booth open and stuff, so I can start doing my own vehicles. With those, I do plan on pretty much doing them up completely perfect, so anything that's even slightly damaged, we're going to completely repair or replace. And I am excited for that, but as I said, I do want to get it to where I have things like the paint booth open, so that way I can fully work on the cars that are technically mine. Trying to get an angle. There we go. Get that leaf spring plate put in place. Get these U-bolts in place. Alright, so most of the back side here is now taken care of. Trying to get it to go across to that side. There we go. Get this axle in place. Then we'll go ahead with the brake disc, pads, the caliper. Get the wheel in place. And I think we've actually got pretty much the back end taken care of then. Alright, get this middle muffler in. And head up to the front end here. Let's get the cross member in first. Always want to get these rubber bushings in fairly early because of the fact that they can sort of get lost in the process, and then later it can be a real pain in the butt. Get those in place. Here's that new steering rack that we bought. Sway bar in place. Front drive axle. The inner tie rod on both sides. Alright, I can see this side, so we'll start over here. Let's get the knuckle put in place, then we can get the outer tie rod to tie it in. Get that cover in place. Get the suspension arms here. Lots of work to it, but it's all worth it. As we can see here, this one's a brand new part that we're putting on, so definitely a good thing. Get the sway bar front end linkage in. Wheel hub. Wheel hub bearing. Now we can get this drive axle put in place, which is brand new. Get the brake on there, also brand new. There's one of those shiny new tires. Everything on that side I think is pretty much taken care of, so now to repeat the process over on this side. Get the shock in place. The linkage. Cover. Get the bearing in here, and now we can put in the drive axle. There we go. Get the wheel. Alright, now let's take a look at what we have. All engine parts there. Yeah, everything there seems to be engine part related. Except for the drive shaft. But the drive shaft we can't put in because we don't have the gearbox in place. So, as far as the underside of the car for right now, it's all set to go. We're just needing the engine to be put in. You know what? didn't take me as long as I thought to build that, so let's go ahead and just build the engine in this episode. We'll put in the engine block here. Get the crankshaft put into place. You know what? I want to go ahead and turn this just to make my life easier. There we go. Didn't replace any of the pistons or the piston rings in the end, because they were good the way they were. But we'll get them all mounted in here. This one definitely is going to have been a pricey rebuild for this guy because of all the new parts I did have to buy for the car. So we'll see how much the total spend will be here at the end. Get all these caps put in place now, so that way nothing moves inside the engine. That would be about worst case scenario. And this is sort of why I like turning it on its side, so that way I can see and hear well. Make sure I'm getting everything put back in place, because the last thing I want is to get this engine rebuilt and then realize I had missed a crankshaft bearing cap or something. I do really recommend this type of game for people, especially if you have an interest in cars but you aren't that knowledgeable about them, because I will say that's sort of the position I'm in. I loved watching car shows and such, and I mean, I would sort of know the names of the parts, but I didn't really know the parts overall. So really, this has taught me a lot as far as a car goes, and I really appreciate it. It's neat now, the fact that I sort of know what all the parts do, where they go, and sort of their overall function. Alright. Sort of odd that we're using the old oil filter, but you know what? It is the way it is. Oh, there we go. Get the alternator in place here. I mean, we left a lot of this engine the way it was, but again, that's because we had so many parts that we did have to buy already. I didn't want to waste his money on parts that were technically functional. So this motor will run well, but it's going to look like garbage still. And that's sort of the trade-off we've got. Get these engine heads on here. Get the camshafts put in place all the way across. The new exhaust manifold that we bought. Guess we can get the cam gears put on here. Some of them are new, some of them are not. Timing belts. Timing belt cover. Let's go ahead and get the other manifold on here. Somewhat like to get both sides sort of done at the same level at the same time. Let's get the intake manifold put in place before it sort of gets buried in there. We can get the fuel rails in. Now let's go ahead and get the engine covers on. That way we can get some of the new spark plugs and ignition coils in. coil cover in place. Head over to this side and repeat the process. As I said, now, if this was a car that I was rebuilding to sell at auction or something like that, I'd probably do all of this stuff new. I really hate the rust look on it and everything, but it is a customer car. Gotta keep the prices somewhat low for them. So we're gonna reuse a lot of his parts that are still viable. Alright, all that side is set up. Now we can turn our attention to the front of the engine and the idle rollers. Get the water pump put in place too. This engine has a lot of different rollers and belts to it. Very complex overall. Alright, we'll get the serpentine belt in place. Then get the air serpentine belt in place. Then we'll put the bolt tensioner on. And the idle roller over here. Alright. So we have the gear, the gearbox, transfer case, drive shaft, starter, and front end drive shaft, but that is it. So we are ready to take this and put it back into the car. Alright, take engine off crate. Now I'm just carrying it around right now because I'm that strong. We'll go ahead and move this to bay 1, and then we'll go ahead and use it to put the engine in place. There we go. Now we can get rid of that. Whoop. Not pull the engine out. Alright, get rid of this. There we go. So the engine's in place. Let's lift it up. Get that gearbox put back in place. Starter put in place. Transfer case. There we go. We'll get the front drive shaft in. And then we'll get the back drive shaft in. Interesting that the front one isn't bolted in place. Guess it's just held in there because of the tension of the pieces that are holding it. Alright, so that should be everything I had. Yep. So let's go ahead and lower it. Close that hood up. Oh, we are going to have to actually put oil in the engine, of course. Can't forget about that. It's sort of an important part. There we go. Now we'll close that hood. Let's look at our checklist. Okay, we have a brake pad that's still bad, and some U-bolts that are still bad. Interesting. So even though the pieces were okay according to it, they're not now. Alright, well, I'm going to have some more work to do, it looks like, on this car, sadly. Sort of frustrating with that because it's one of those that I wish it had let me know. I mean, the parts were not in the red, as you could see, they were all going in as yellow and such, but now it's saying that they're no good. So, we will disassemble it again. Basically, I'm going to get to the point where I can take the engine out. Actually, do I even want to take the engine out? It's just the ignition coils and the one cam gear that I have to deal with. I can probably do that right in the car. Let's go ahead and pull this stuff just out of here. Basically, any of the ones that weren't replaced, we're going to replace this time. And I will end up doing this work probably next episode here, but I just want to get the stuff off the car here. That way I'm one step ahead. Cam gears are going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt to get to in the car here. But I think I can. I just don't feel like pulling this engine out again. Oh, I'm going to have to take off the covers. Yeah, it probably would have been better to pull the whole engine out, but you know what? At this point, I'm committed. Needless to say, I'm sort of frustrated is really what it comes down to. Alright, so let's get the timing belts off here. And get those darn gears off. We're just going to replace all of them that weren't replaced before. Alright, so brake pads, you know what? We'll do all the brake pads. We'll do all the U-bolts and the plates. Brake calipers, double wishbone shock absorber. We'll replace the other one entirely. And we've got some rubber bushings that need to be replaced as well. Yeah, so I'm going to have to take apart the bottom of the car again pretty much to get those parts off, which is very unfortunate, but you know what? That's just what we're going to have to do. We will do that in the next episode though, because yeah, just very frustrating when I had the car in pieces. I had it at the point where I could have replaced all this stuff, but the way the game is set up, it doesn't tell you that some of those parts needed to be replaced or not. Would have been very nice if it had told us. Because it says repair minimum parts to 100%, but it allows me to use some of the parts that aren't at 100%. So it's very confusing in that way. As I said, though, I will deal with that in the next episode. We'll rebuild the rest of the engine, and then we'll tear apart the suspension and redo it in the next episode. If you enjoyed what I did in this episode, though, please go ahead and click that like button. If you've not already, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, so that you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. Thank you, and I hope to see you all again for more Car Mechanic Simulator 2018.